The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Windsor Castle as Princess of Wales sat quietly in her private study. The year 2024 had been one of the most challenging in her life, yet as she looked out at the frost-covered grounds, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months: genuine optimism. It was December, and the approaching Christmas season carried with it a promise of renewal that felt different this time. Just 9 months earlier, Sworld had been turned upside down. What began as a routine abdominal surgery in January had led to an unexpected discovery that would change everything. The post-operative tests revealed the presence of cancer, a word that seemed to echo through the corridors of Kensington Palace with devastating clarity. The woman who had always been a pillar of strength for the royal family suddenly found herself facing her own mortality. Prince William remembered those early days with a heaviness that still occasionally caught him off guard. He had watched his wife, usually so composed and graceful in the face of public scrutiny, grapple with fears that went far beyond anything they had ever experienced together. There were nights when he would find her staring out the window at Hall, their countryside retreat in Norfolk, seemingly lost in thoughts too heavy for words. The decision to step back from public duties had not been easy for her. She was a woman who thrived on connection, who found purpose in her royal engagements and the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. But as the chemotherapy treatments began, it became clear that this battle would require all of her energy and focus. The royal calendar was quietly adjusted, and the Princess of Wales began a journey that millions of families around the world knew all too well. During those difficult months, something beautiful began to emerge from the darkness. The enforced quietness allowed to reconnect with what truly mattered. She spent precious hours with George, Charlotte, and Louis, watching them play in the gardens of Hall without the constant pressure of upcoming engagements weighing on her mind. She read stories by the fireplace, helped with homework, and discovered the simple joy of being completely present for her children. William, too, found himself transformed by the experience. The man who would one day be king had to learn to be, first and foremost, a husband and father in the truest sense. He took on more responsibilities with the children, becoming their primary royal parent at many events while focused on her recovery. Those who knew him well noticed a new depth in his eyes, a maturity that came from nearly losing what he valued most. The turning point came in late summer. His medical team delivered the news they had all been hoping for: the treatment was working better than expected. The cancer markers were decreasing, and her body was responding well to the chemotherapy. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to think beyond the immediate battle and began to consider what her return to royal life might look like. September brought the announcement that would bring tears to thousands of royal supporters around the world. Appeared in a deeply personal video, filmed in the very Norfolk woodlands where she had found solace during her darkest days. With William and their children by her side, she shared that her preventative chemotherapy treatment had been completed. But more than that, she spoke about what the experience had taught her about love, resilience, and the importance of cherishing every moment. The video was unlike anything the royal family had shared before. Gone was the formal tone that usually characterized royal announcements. Instead, viewers saw a mother and wife who had faced her fears and emerged with a new understanding of what truly mattered. Spoke directly to the camera, her voice steady but filled with emotion, about the journey she had traveled and the gratitude she felt for the support of her family and the public. What struck people most was not just her courage, but her authenticity. She acknowledged the fear and uncertainty that had marked her journey, but she also spoke with hope about the future. She mentioned her eagerness to return to her royal duties, but on her own terms, with a renewed sense of purpose that came from having faced life's fragility head-on. As autumn arrived, began making carefully chosen public appearances. Each one was planned with precision, ensuring that she had the energy and emotional strength to engage fully. The first major event was a visit to a children's hospital, a cause close to her heart that had taken on new meaning after her own experience as a patient. The photographs from that day showed a woman who had been changed by her ordeal. There was a new softness in her demeanor, a deeper empathy in her interactions. Royal watchers and the general public began to notice something different about the Princess of Wales. While she had always been gracious and kind, there was now an added dimension to her presence. She listened more intently, stayed longer in conversations, and seemed to genuinely connect with people in a way that felt less formal and more heartfelt. The woman who had faced her own mortality was now bringing that perspective to every interaction. Behind the scenes was already planning what would become the most meaningful Christmas season of her royal career. She had ideas for her annual carol service that would reflect not just the traditional themes of the season, but also the lessons she had learned about community, support, and the power of human connection. This Christmas would be different, not just for her family, but for everyone who had followed their journey through the difficult year. The seeds of what would become a transformative Christmas message were already being planted as winter approached. Knew that she had been given a second chance, and she was determined to use it to create something beautiful not just for her family, but for everyone who had supported them through their darkest hours. As November settled over England with its crisp air and golden leaves, found herself energized by a project that felt deeply personal: her annual Christmas carol service at Westminster Abbey. This year, however, the event would carry special significance. After months of private struggle and healing, she was ready to share a message that came from the deepest part of her heart. In the quiet moments between her gradually returning royal duties, would sit in her study at Kensington Palace with notebooks spread before her. The theme for this year's carol service had come to her during one of her chemotherapy sessions, when she had been reflecting on the kindness of the medical staff and the overwhelming support from people she had never met. Love and empathy, these would be the pillars upon which she would build not just the service, but what she hoped would be a new chapter in her royal role. William watched his wife plan with an intensity he hadn't seen since before her diagnosis. There was something different about her approach this time. Where previous years had focused on traditional charity work and community outreach, was now thinking bigger, deeper. She wanted to create an event that would bring together people who had shown extraordinary kindness during the most difficult times, not just her own, but in communities across the United Kingdom. The guest list for the carol service began to take shape with careful consideration. Personally reviewed nominations from across the country, reading stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. There was 9-year-old Turner, who had turned her artistic talents into a fundraising empire for food banks. Jack, a 102-year-old D-Day veteran whose stories of resilience during wartime resonated deeply with his own journey through adversity. Holocaust survivor Stephen Frank, whose presence would remind everyone of the power of hope even in the darkest circumstances. Each invitation was personal, each story carefully chosen to illustrate the theme wanted to convey. This wasn't going to be just another royal event with celebrities and dignitaries. This was going to be a celebration of the human spirit, of the connections that bind us together when everything else seems uncertain. The artistic elements of the service were planned with equal care, worked closely with Westminster Abbey's team to create an atmosphere that would feel both sacred and welcoming. Christmas trees from Windsor Great Park, donated by King Charles, would line the historic abbey. The decorations would be elegant but warm, creating spaces where people could feel comfortable sharing their stories and experiences. One of its most personal touches was the creation of what she called the connection tree. Working with artist Charlie, whose work she had long admired, she developed the concept of a tree where guests could leave messages about people who had supported them through difficult times. The front cover of the service program would feature illustration of people embracing as they walked toward Westminster Abbey through falling snow, with the simple but profound question, "How did I help?" And the answer, "You were by my side." Which was everything. The musical selections reflected its desire to blend traditional carols with contemporary songs that spoke to modern struggles and hopes. She personally invited artists like Dean and Gregory Porter, whose music had provided comfort during her own difficult months. The Westminster Abbey Choir would perform traditional carols, but there would also be room for newer pieces that spoke to themes of healing and community. As the planning progressed, found herself thinking not just about the service itself, but about the message she wanted to send through everything the royal family did during the Christmas season. The annual Christmas card, typically a formal affair with carefully staged photography, would need to reflect the same authenticity and warmth she was bringing to the carol service. The photograph chosen for their Christmas card came from the same video shoot where had announced the end of her chemotherapy. It showed the family in a moment of genuine joy and relief, sitting together in the Norfolk countryside with the children embracing their parents. There was something unguarded about their expressions, a happiness that came from having weathered a storm together and emerged stronger. William found himself moved by his wife's transformation. The woman who had always taken her royal duties seriously was now approaching them with a depth of purpose that inspired everyone around her. She spoke less about obligation and more about opportunity. She talked about the privilege of being able to bring people together, to shine light on stories that deserved to be heard, to use their platform for something genuinely meaningful. The children, too, were being prepared for what hoped would be a different kind of Christmas season. George, Charlotte, and Louis had watched their mother's journey with the resilience that children possess, but they had also absorbed lessons about strength, vulnerability, and the importance of family. Made sure they understood that this year's celebrations would be about more than presents and traditions. They would be about gratitude and connection. In early December, as the final preparations for the carol service were, received a phone call that would add another layer of significance to the season. Medical teams confirmed what they had been hoping for. All of her tests were coming back clear. She was officially in remission. The timing felt like a gift not just to her family, but to everyone who had been following their journey. The news was kept private for the moment, but knew it would color everything about the upcoming celebrations. This Christmas would mark not just the end of a difficult year, but the beginning of what felt like a new era for their family and their approach to royal life. The carol service, the Christmas card, and their public appearances would all carry the message that they had learned through their trials, that love, community, and authentic connection were the most powerful forces in the world. As December 6th approached, the date set for the carol service felt a mixture of nerves and excitement she hadn't experienced in years. This would be her first major public event since completing treatment, and she knew that people would be watching not just what she said, but how she looked, how she moved, how she interacted with others. But for perhaps the first time in her royal career, she felt completely confident in the message she wanted to share. The stage was set for what would become one of the most moving and significant royal events in recent memory. Had taken her personal journey of healing and transformation and shaped it into something that could inspire and comfort others facing their own challenges. The carol service would be just the beginning of a Christmas season that would show the world a royal family transformed by adversity into something more genuine, more connected, and more inspiring than ever before. December 6th dawned crisp and clear in London, with winter sunlight streaming through the ancient stones of Westminster Abbey. Inside Kensington Palace was putting the finishing touches on her appearance for what she knew would be one of the most important events of her royal career. She had chosen a forest green coat with fur trim, its rich color symbolizing both the Christmas season and the new growth that had emerged from her year of trials. As her stylist made final adjustments to her hair, found herself thinking about the letter she had written for the evening's guests. The words had poured out of her during a quiet moment the previous weekend, sitting by the fireplace at Hall while the children played nearby. It was perhaps the most personal message she had ever shared with the public, and every word had been carefully considered. "Christmas is one of my times of the year," she had written. "It is a time for celebration and joy, but it also gives us the opportunity to slow down and reflect on the deeper things that connect us all." The letter would be included in every service program, her thoughts on vulnerability, empathy, and the light that love can provide even in the darkest times. At Windsor Castle, William was helping George, Charlotte, and Louis prepare for the evening. The children had chosen to coordinate their outfits navy blue for the boys and a deep blue dress for Charlotte that complemented their father's suit. They had been talking about the service for weeks and had made sure they understood the significance of the people they would meet that evening. "Remember," William told them as they climbed into the car, "some of the people we'll meet tonight have helped others through very difficult times, just like the doctors and nurses helped Mummy. Tonight is about saying thank you to all those people." Charlotte nodded solemnly. At 9 years old, she had developed a keen understanding of her mother's journey over the past year. "Will Mummy be okay being around so many people?" she asked with the directness that children possess. "Mummy is ready," William assured her. "This is something she's really wanted to do." At Westminster Abbey, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Royal fans had gathered outside, many holding signs with messages of support for. Inside, the ancient walls were transformed with Christmas decorations that managed to be both magnificent and welcoming. The connection tree stood prominently near the entrance, already adorned with red loops from early arrivals who had left messages about people who had supported them. Arrived first, stepping out of her car to a chorus of cheers from the waiting crowd. The months of treatment had left subtle changes. Her face was slightly thinner, and there was a new quality to her smile that spoke of hard-won wisdom. But she radiated a warmth and energy that immediately put everyone at ease. Inside the Abbey, she moved through the gathering guests with a grace that seemed enhanced rather than diminished by her experiences. She spent time with each special guest, listening intently to their stories. When she met Turner, the 9-year-old fundraising artist, knelt to the child's level and spoke to her with genuine interest about her artwork and charity work. "You've helped so many families," told the young girl. "That's exactly what Christmas spirit is all about, thinking about others and finding ways to help them." Her conversation with Holocaust survivor Stephen Frank was equally moving. The elderly man shared stories of hope and resilience that resonated deeply with his own recent experiences. "You understand now," he told her quietly, "how precious each day really is." When William arrived with the children, the Abbey erupted in warm applause. The sight of the family together, all looking healthy and happy, brought tears to many eyes. George, Charlotte, and Louis approached the connection tree with their own red loops, each containing messages they had written about their mother's strength during her difficult year. The service itself was unlike any royal event in recent memory, had insisted on a format that felt more like a community gathering than a formal ceremony. The musical performances were interspersed with readings and personal stories from guests. When Dean sang, her voice filled the ancient space with contemporary soul that somehow felt perfectly at home among the traditional carols. Prince William's Bible reading was delivered with a new depth of meaning. The passage he had chosen spoke of light shining in darkness, words that carried particular significance for their family's journey. His voice was steady and clear, but those who knew him well could hear the emotion underlying his words. The most powerful moment came when herself addressed the gathering. She had not planned to speak at length, but as she looked out at the assembled crowd of heroes, celebrities, family members, and friends, she felt compelled to share from her heart. "This past year has taught me so much about what really matters," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the Abbey's sound system. "When you face uncertainty, you discover that the love of family, the kindness of friends, and the compassion of strangers can literally carry you through the darkest times." She spoke about the letters and cards that had arrived at Kensington Palace during her treatment, many from people she had never met, but who had taken time to share their own stories of struggle and survival. "You reminded me that none of us faces life's challenges alone," she said. "That's what tonight is really about, celebrating that connection, that love that binds us all together." The audience was captivated. This was not the carefully scripted speech they might have expected from a royal event. This was a woman sharing her truth, speaking from experience about concepts that everyone in the Abbey had encountered in their own lives: fear, hope, love, and the power of human connection. When the formal service concluded, something unprecedented happened. Instead of the usual polite applause and orderly exit, people began approaching each other, sharing stories, exchanging contact information. The connection tree became a focal point where strangers became friends, united by the common thread of having survived difficulties through the help of others. Moved through the crowd, no longer as a royal receiving homage, but as a participant in a genuine community celebration. She listened to stories, offered comfort, and shared in the joy of connection that had been her goal for the evening. As the family prepared to leave, William watched his wife with a mixture of pride and amazement. The woman who had been so fragile just months earlier was now energizing an entire room with her presence. The transformation was remarkable not just in terms of her physical recovery, but in the way she had channeled her experiences into something that could inspire and heal others. The photographs taken that evening would become some of the most beloved royal images in years. They captured not just the formal beauty of the event, but the genuine emotion and connection that had filled the Abbey. His face in particular glowed with a contentment and purpose that spoke to everyone who saw the images. As they drove home through London's twinkling Christmas lights, the children, chattering excitedly about the evening, felt a profound sense of completion. The carol service had been everything she had hoped for and more. It had marked not just her return to public life, but the beginning of a new way of being royal, more authentic, more connected, more focused on what really mattered. The evening had been captured by cameras for broadcast on Christmas Eve, ensuring that the message of love, empathy, and connection would reach millions of homes across Britain and around the world. But the real success was measured in the faces she had seen that night, the connections that had been made, and the hope that had been shared. The carol service was just the beginning of what would become a transformative Christmas season, one that would show the world that the royal family had emerged from their trials not just intact, but stronger and more inspiring than ever before. The days following the carol's service brought an unprecedented response from people around the globe. Social media platforms buzzed with messages of admiration and support for and her family. The hashtag Together at Christmas began trending worldwide as people shared their own stories of love and resilience, inspired by what they had witnessed that evening at Westminster Abbey. At Kensington Palace, staff members found themselves overwhelmed by the volume of letters, emails, and packages arriving from well-wishers. Unlike the formal correspondence typically received by the royal household, these messages were deeply personal. People shared their own cancer journeys, their experiences of loss and recovery, and their gratitude for openness about her struggles. One letter from a mother in Manchester whose teenage daughter was undergoing chemotherapy particularly moved. "Seeing you emerge from your treatment with such grace and purpose has given my daughter hope that she too can come through this stronger," the woman wrote. "You've shown her that it's possible to transform pain into something beautiful." The Christmas card release on December 19th added another layer to the growing sentiment that something fundamental had shifted in how the royal family connected with the public. The photograph, taken from the video that announced completion of treatment, showed the family in a moment of genuine joy and relief. Unlike previous years' formal portraits, this image captured them in an unguarded moment of authentic happiness. The decision to use social media to share the card, complete with animated snow and twinkling lights, represented a departure from traditional royal communication methods. The simple message, "Wishing everyone a very happy Christmas," felt more like a note from friends than a formal royal greeting. Within hours, the post had garnered millions of views and hundreds of thousands of heartfelt responses. Royal photographers noted something they had never seen before in their coverage of the family. Will, who had filmed the original footage from which the Christmas card image was taken, spoke publicly about the experience. "There was something different about the family that day," he explained to reporters. "They weren't posing for cameras or thinking about public perception. They were just being themselves, celebrating being together after a difficult time." The small detail of the card's temporary deletion and reposting, with a slightly different crop that emphasized the family's closeness, became a talking point among royal watchers. Rather than seeing it as a mistake, many interpreted it as evidence of the genuine care and thought that went into every aspect of their Christmas message. King Charles, who had faced his own cancer diagnosis earlier in the year, watched his daughter-in-law's transformation with deep admiration. The solidarity between the two family members who had shared similar struggles added another dimension to the Christmas celebrations. Their joint experience had brought a new depth to the royal family's understanding of vulnerability and resilience. As Christmas Eve approached, the broadcast of the carol service on television reached an audience far beyond those who had attended the event. Viewing figures exceeded all expectations, with many families gathering specifically to watch what had become known as Christmas Message. The program was structured to highlight not just the musical performances, but the personal stories of the guests and the broader themes of community and connection. Television critics, typically reserved in their praise for royal programming, were unanimous in their positive response. One reviewer wrote, "This wasn't just a carol service, it was an authentic leadership. The Princess of Wales has transformed her personal struggle into a universal message of hope that transcends royal protocol and speaks directly to the human experience." The international response was equally remarkable. From Australia to Canada, from Japan to South Africa, news outlets picked up the story of Christmas Message and its impact on royal watchers. The themes of resilience, authenticity, and community connection resonated across cultural boundaries, suggesting that the royal family had found a way to speak to universal human experiences. Behind the scenes was processing the magnitude of the response with characteristic thoughtfulness. During quiet moments at Hall, as the family prepared for their traditional Christmas she reflected on how far they had all come in the space of a single year. William, observing his wife's continued amazement at the public response, reminded her of something she seemed to have forgotten. "You've always had this effect on people," he told her one evening as they wrapped presents for the children. "The difference now is that you're speaking from a place of real experience. People can tell the difference between duty and calling." The children, too, had been affected by the response to their mother's Christmas message. Charlotte, in particular, seemed to understand that their family's experience had become something larger than themselves. "Are we helping other people feel better?" she asked her mother one evening. "I hope so," replied. "Sometimes when we share our struggles, it helps other people feel less alone with theirs." Christmas morning carried a special significance this year. The traditional walk to Mary Magdalene Church became a celebration not just of the holiday, but of its full return to public life. Dressed in an elegant emerald green coat that symbolized renewal and growth, she walked with confidence and joy that was evident to everyone present. The crowd that had gathered to watch the royal family's Christmas morning tradition was larger than usual, drawn by a desire to show support for and to witness what many felt was a historic moment. When she paused to speak with well-wishers, accepting flowers and Christmas cards, her interactions had a warmth and genuineness that moved many to tears. One elderly woman who had traveled from Scotland specifically to be there pressed a small wrapped package into his hand. "For everything you've given us this Christmas," she said simply. Later, would discover it contained a hand-knitted ornament with a note. "For your tree, from all of us who found hope in your story." The Christmas Day church service itself became another opportunity for the family to demonstrate the themes had emphasized in her carol service. They participated fully in the community worship, singing carols with genuine enthusiasm and engaging with other members of the congregation with obvious pleasure. Media coverage of the day focused not just on fashion choices or traditional protocol, but on the transformation that was evident in the royal family's approach to their public role. Commentary pieces spoke of a new era of royal authenticity and a Christmas that changed the monarchy. As the Christmas season drew to a close, the impact of this message continued to reverberate. Charities reported increases in donations and volunteer applications, with many new supporters specifically citing the Christmas Carol service as their inspiration. Community groups across the UK began organizing their own connection trees and events focused on recognizing local heroes and building stronger community bonds. The success of the Christmas season represented more than just positive publicity for the royal family. It marked the emergence of a new model for how public figures could use their platforms to create genuine connection and inspire positive change. Had taken her personal journey through illness and recovery and transformed it into a message that resonated with millions of people facing their own challenges. Royal historians would later point to this Christmas as a turning point in the modern monarchy's evolution. The combination of authenticity, vulnerability, and hope that characterized its approach provided a template for how the royal family could remain relevant and inspiring in an increasingly complex world. For herself, the Christmas season had proved that her instinct to be more open and genuine in her royal role was not just personally fulfilling, but publicly valuable. As she looked ahead to the new year, she felt confident that she had found her authentic voice as a member of the royal family, one that honored both her responsibilities and her truth. The Christmas that began with uncertainty and hope had ended with confirmation that transformation, both personal and public, was not only possible but powerful. The warmth and connection that characterized the season would become the foundation for a new era in the royal family's relationship with the public, one built on genuine human experience rather than distant formality. In the years to come, royal watchers would look back on this Christmas as the moment when Princess of Wales stepped into her full power as a royal, using her authentic experiences to create something beautiful and meaningful for millions of people around the world. The Christmas message that moved so many had indeed signaled a warmer era, one in which the royal family's humanity became their greatest strength.